All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. You know how much we love diving deep into these fascinating topics. And you, our awesome listeners, are right there with us, eager to soak up knowledge without feeling totally overloaded.
Absolutely. It's all about those aha moments, those sparks of insight that make you see things in a new light.
Exactly. And today, we're taking that deep dive into a space you visit every single day, probably without even realizing it. It's that zone your mind enters when you're just kind of spacing out, like when you're staring out the window, lost in thought, or just letting your mind wander.
It's that state of doing nothing that's actually doing so much behind the scenes.
Right. And that's what we're going to unpack today. We've been digging into some really interesting research and discussions, all exploring what's actually happening in your brain during those moments of mental drift.
Precisely. And one of the key players here is something called the default mode network, or the DMN for short.
Okay, the DMN. So is this like the control center for daydreaming? What's the deal with this network?
You can think of it that way.
Hmm.
Imagine the DMN as your brain's backstage crew. When you're not actively focused on a task, when the spotlight of your attention isn't shining on something specific, that's when the DMN steps in, gets to work.
So it's like the brain's autopilot mode.
In a way, yes. But it's not just idly running in the background. What our sources highlight is that the DMN is actually crucial for some pretty important mental functions. Things like processing memories, thinking about the future, and reflecting on ourselves. All of this happens when the DMN is active.
Okay, so it's more than just random thoughts swirling around. There's a real purpose behind all that mental activity. And I guess it makes sense, right? We all spend a good chunk of our day lost in thought.
We do. And one of the things that really fascinated me in the research was how the DMN handles our relationship with the past. You know those times when a memory just pops into your head, seemingly out of nowhere? Like that embarrassing moment from high school or that amazing vacation you took years ago?
Yes. Especially those embarrassing moments. Why do those always come back to haunt us?
Well, it's very likely the DMN at work. It's constantly sifting through your memories, replaying events, and trying to make sense of your past experiences. Almost like your brain has its own internal time machine.
So it's not just random flashbacks. There's a purpose behind them.
Exactly. And this replaying of past events isn't just about nostalgia or reliving those cringeworthy moments. It actually helps us learn from our experiences and prepare for the future.
Okay, so the DMN has us revisiting the past. But what about those times when we're mentally rehearsing for something that hasn't happened yet? Like planning out a conversation or imagining different outcomes for a situation. Is that the DMN too?
You got it. The DMN is heavily involved in what's called future simulation. We're constantly running these mental simulations, imagining different scenarios and how we might react to them. Think about it. How often do you find yourself mentally preparing for a meeting with your boss or thinking through how you'll handle a tricky situation?
Oh, all the time,
Yeah,
especially before important conversations. It's like I'm trying to anticipate every possible question or response.
exactly. And that's your DMN kicking in, helping you prepare and strategize. It's essentially allowing you to practice in your mind before you face the real deal. But there's another fascinating aspect to the DMN that our sources delve into, and that's its role in facilitating what they call thought talk.
Thought talk. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Think of thought talk as that constant inner monologue we all have.
Hmm.
It's that voice in your head that's reflecting on your actions, processing your emotions, or just kind of musing about life. It's where you might ask yourself questions like, why did I say that? Or what should I do next? Or even just, I wonder what's for dinner.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that inner voice can be pretty chatty sometimes. But seriously, it's wild to think that these seemingly random thoughts are actually part of a larger system, this DMN that's constantly working behind the scenes.
It is, and one of the most interesting things about thought talk, as highlighted in our research, is its impact on our confidence and actions. The content of that internal dialogue can significantly shape how we see ourselves and how we approach challenges.
So are you saying that if we have more positive self-talk, we're likely to be more confident and take more risks?
Exactly. The research draws a clear distinction between those who engage in more negative self-talk, constantly criticizing themselves or doubting their abilities, and those who have a more encouraging and supportive inner voice.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, we all know that feeling of being our own worst critic. But how do we shift that internal dialogue? If our thought talk is so ingrained, can we actually change it?
That's where this idea of cognitive reframing comes in, which our source emphasizes as a powerful technique. It's about actively challenging those negative thought patterns and consciously choosing to reframe them in a more positive and constructive light.
So instead of saying, I'm so stupid, I messed that up again, you might say, okay, that didn't go as planned, but what can I learn from this and how can I approach it differently next time?
Precisely. It's about turning those moments of self-criticism into opportunities for growth and learning. And what's even more exciting is the connection that our research highlights between this kind of mind wandering and creativity.
Oh, really? So letting our minds wander can actually boost our creative thinking. Tell me more about that.
Seems counterintuitive, right? We often think of creativity as requiring intense focus and effort. But what the research suggests is that giving our minds the freedom to wander, to make those unexpected connections, can actually lead to those aha moments of insight and innovation.
So it's like giving our brain some space to breathe and allowing those creative sparks to ignite.
Exactly. It's about breaking free from those rigid thought patterns and allowing our minds to explore new possibilities. Think of it like shaking up a snow globe of all your ideas and experiences and seeing what new patterns emerge when things settle.
I love that analogy. So we've been talking about mind wandering in more general sense, but our sources also dive into some specific ways to leverage these mental detours,
hmm
particularly for boosting creativity.
Right. They offer some really practical techniques that we can all try out. One of the most popular suggestions is free writing or journaling.
Oh yeah. Just letting those thoughts flow onto the page without any judgment or editing, I've heard that can be really helpful for unlocking creativity.
Exactly. The idea is to bypass your inner critic and tap into those deeper subconscious ideas that might be bubbling beneath the surface. Just set a timer for 5 or 10 minutes and write down whatever comes to mind, no matter how random or silly it might seem.
It's like giving your thoughts permission to just be without the pressure of perfection or coherence. I'm definitely going to try that. What are some of the other suggestions?
Another interesting one is embracing boredom. And I know that sounds a bit strange in our constantly connected world, but hear me out.
Okay, I'm listening. Convince me why boredom is a good thing.
Well, think about it. We're so used to filling every spare moment with stimulation, whether it's checking our phones, scrolling through social media, or listening to podcasts. We rarely give our brains the opportunity to just be still and let our thoughts wander aimlessly.
True. It's like we've become afraid of silence and stillness.
Exactly. And what the research suggests is that these pockets of boredom are actually crucial for creativity. It's in those moments of quiet contemplation, when we're not bombarded with external stimulation, that our minds can make those unexpected connections and generate new ideas.
So instead of automatically reaching for my phone while waiting in line, I should just let my mind wander and observe my surroundings.
Precisely. It might feel a bit uncomfortable at first, but you might be surprised by the insights that emerge when you give your brain a break from all that digital noise.
Okay, I'm willing to give it a try. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? I come up with a brilliant new idea while staring at the cereal aisle. What else do our sources suggest?
Well, this one might resonate with some of our more dream-inclined listeners. Dream journaling.
Ah, yes. Tapping into the creative power of our subconscious minds. Dreams can be so weird and wonderful and sometimes surprisingly insightful.
Exactly. By keeping a dream journal, you're essentially capturing those nighttime wanderings of your mind. You never know what gems of inspiration or emotional processing might be hidden within those dream sequences.
Okay, I'm sold on these practical tips. But let's switch gears a bit and talk about the actual science behind all of this. How do we know that the DMN is really the driving force behind mind wandering?
Well, our source highlights some really fascinating fMRI studies that have literally mapped mind wandering to specific areas of the brain. These brain scans show increased blood flow and activity in the DMN when people are engaged in mind wandering.
Whoa, that's incredible. So we can actually see the DMN lighting up when someone's lost in thought.
Exactly. And the source even breaks down the specific brain regions involved, giving us a glimpse into the neural symphony that orchestrates our mental wanderings.
Okay, time for a quick brain anatomy lesson. Hit me with the details.
One of the key players, as you might expect, is the medial temporal lobe. This area is heavily involved in memory, so it's no surprise that it's active when we're recalling past events or experiences during those DMN-driven daydreams.
Makes sense. What are some of the other brain regions involved?
There's also the ventromedial prefrontal cortex,
Yeah.
the posterior cingulate cortex, and the angular gyrus. All these areas light up when we're resting or our attention turns inward.
Okay, so these regions are basically the DMN's headquarters.
You could say that. And what's fascinating is that these are the same regions that are active during those DMN functions we discussed earlier: memory processing, future planning, and self-reflection.
So it's all interconnected. Our brains are such amazing and complex organs. But our sources also present a bit of a paradox when it comes to mind wandering. They highlight its potential downsides as well.
Right. As much as mind wandering can be a source of creativity and insight, it can also lead us down some less than productive mental paths.
What do you mean?
Well, think about those times when you're trying to focus on a task, but your mind keeps getting pulled away by thoughts about the past, worries about the future, or even just totally improbable scenarios.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely guilty of that. It's like my brain has a mind of its own sometimes.
Exactly. And while these mental detours can sometimes be helpful, allowing us to make connections or process emotions, they can also become a source of distraction and stress.
So our minds can be both our greatest asset and our biggest obstacle.
Precisely. And as our source points out, this is especially relevant in our modern world, where we're constantly bombarded with information and distractions.
It's like our brains never get a break. There's always something vying for our attention.
Right. And this constant stimulation can actually hinder our ability to engage in that deeper, more creative mind wandering that we've been talking about.
So what's the solution? How do we find that balance between allowing our minds to wander freely and staying focused on the task at hand?
Well, our sources offer a really important piece of advice. We need to consciously create space for mind wandering. It's not just about letting our minds run wild all the time, but rather about intentionally carving out time for those low cognitive load activities that allow our brains to roam freely.
So it's about being deliberate about our downtime.
Exactly. Instead of automatically filling every spare moment with our phones or other distractions, we need to actively choose to engage in activities that allow our minds to wander.
So things like going for a walk in nature, taking a long bath, or just sitting quietly and observing our surroundings.
Exactly. These kinds of activities send a signal to our brains that it's okay to relax, to let go of that constant need for focus and control.
And it's in these moments of deliberate relaxation that our brains can really get to work, making those unexpected connections and generating those creative breakthroughs.
Precisely. Our sources emphasize the importance of stepping away from our usual work environments and digital devices to signal to our brains that we're in a state of relaxation, not just idleness.
It's like giving ourselves permission to daydream.
Exactly. And as our source so eloquently describes it, it's about allowing our brains to shake when we're alone with our thoughts, letting those ideas drift while we're reading or engaged in other low-key activities.
I love that imagery. It really captures the essence of mind wandering. And one of the things that really resonated with me in our source was the personal reflection about feeling a lack of time for personal thought. And then suddenly having these quirky, unexpected ideas pop up,
Right.
like imagining the world from a bird's eye view or seeing things from a dog's perspective.
Right. It just goes to show how powerful and surprising those moments of mental wandering can be.
Hmm.
And it ties directly into a concept that our source mentions, often referred to as that meditative state of mind where our thoughts flow freely and our brains can wander without a specific agenda.
It's like tapping into a different mode of thinking, a more intuitive and imaginative state.
Exactly. And our source beautifully describes the enjoyment of those solitary moments as a form of self-healing. But it also acknowledges the other side of the coin, that feeling of being lost or even experiencing self-doubt when those endless thoughts start swirling around.
Like that example of questioning a seemingly simple decision, like changing your name, and suddenly finding yourself spiraling down a rabbit hole of what ifs and maybes. It's like our minds can be both our greatest comfort and our biggest source of anxiety.
It's a delicate balance for sure. And the source aptly describes this internal experience as a spiritual free journey. And from this journey emerges that thought talk, or J that we were discussing earlier, those ongoing internal conversations where we revisit past interactions, remember old friends, and re-examine past feelings.
It's like our brains are constantly processing our experiences, trying to make sense of our personal narrative. And as our sources point out, this self-dialogue can be incredibly valuable for self-understanding, especially when we're feeling lost or confused. It can help us clarify our desires, values, and motivations.
Our source uses a great analogy here, comparing our brain's activity during reading to switching channels. It's like we're constantly flicking between the show of our current focus, the movie of our memories, and the trailer for our future plans.
So true. We might start reading about history, but then suddenly our minds jump to that grocery list we need to make or that awkward conversation we had earlier in the day.
Exactly. Our minds are constantly weaving together threads of past, present, and future. And what's important to remember, as our source emphasizes, is that these self-dialogues aren't just about replaying the past or worrying about the future. They're also a powerful catalyst for creativity.
So those seemingly boring moments when we're just letting our minds wander aimlessly are actually prime opportunities for our brains to make those unexpected connections and generate new ideas.
Precisely. It's like those moments of stillness are actually the fertile ground from which creativity can sprout.
So the key takeaway here, as our sources underscore, is not to dismiss those moments when our minds wander. They're not a sign of being unproductive or unfocused. They're actually a valuable part of our cognitive process.
Exactly. And instead of resisting those mental detours, we should embrace them as opportunities for our brains to reorganize information, make new connections, and generate those sparks of insight and inspiration.
So the next time you find yourself with a spare moment, resist that urge to immediately grab your phone or fill the silence with external noise.
Right. Give your brain some time to just be, to process, to wander, to create. Let those unconscious moments, as our source beautifully puts it, ferment.
I love that. It's like giving our minds the space and time they need to brew something truly magical.
And with that in mind, we'd love to leave you with a final thought to ponder. Think back to the last time your mind wandered. When was it? And did you notice any impact on your mood or creativity? Did any new ideas or insights emerge from that mental journey?
It's a question worth reflecting on. And as always, we encourage you to be kind to yourselves, to give your minds the space and time they need to wander, to process, and to create. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.